this newest Gundam series is surprisingly actually built on the foundations of a what-if story, and so uses some of the older shows to spring off of. This makes it very interesting as a long-time fan, and has it immediately start with a lot of fan service, but if you're a newcomer, you will probably find yourself feeling a bit lost and overwhelmed during the first episode, which acts as a prologue showing the history and how it's changed. That prologue depicts the events of the original Gundam series from 1979, but diverges when the... I'm not really sure what to call him? Anti-villain? Yeah, anti-villain. Gets some intuition that he should personally go on the mission instead of staying on the ship as a commander should. That then leads to him reaching the war-changing mecha known as a mobile suit in the show, before the original protagonist, which then entirely changes the war. That war was the Zeon War of Independence, also known as the 1 Year War, since it lasted almost exactly a year, starting January 3rd, 0079 and ending January 1st, 0080. So only 2 days off from being exactly a year. The year is 0079 because in this Gundam universe, when humanity colonised space, they changed the calendar from AD to UC, the Universal Century, which is then also what this Gundam universe is called and known as in real life. Just quickly, if you want a little tip for making sense of the franchise as a whole, if it doesn't say Season 2, and isn't part of the Universal Century, then the show is its own thing and probably perfectly fine to jump into. And after watching this video, even if it is in the Universal Century, you'll pretty much be able to watch it fine anyway. The fact the war only lasted a year doesn't mean it wasn't intense though. 5.9 billion people died, over half of the entire pre-war population. The original series starts after most of the war has already happened, 8 months in, and shows the last 4 months of the war. And just as an aside, that's why you shouldn't actually stress too much about starting a new Gundam series or where to start or anything, because being a little lost and out of your element is part of the point. It is a deliberate part of most of the shows. Right from the very, very beginning, when Gundam started in 1979, there was still the most eventful and bloody 8 months of the largest war in history that we as viewers weren't shown and just get thrown into. Some fog of war and confusion is the point. Don't you click off this video though. Don't do it. I take it all back. You need to know all of this information. Anyway, the war was started by the Principality of Zeon, the nation that the space colonies of Side 3 formed. Space colonies in this universe are honestly really cool. They're based on the work of real-life American physicist Gerard O'Neill and are known as O'Neill cylinders. As the name implies, they are large cylinders that people can live inside of in space and rotate in order to create artificial gravity for the residents inside. That inside is then separated into large strips of land and glass that allows natural light and heat into the colony. The colonies were then mostly populated by forcing people of Earth to relocate to them as a way to reduce the Earth's population. Side 3 is the place where a group of colonies are clustered. Colonies are generally clustered together so that they can be in the real gravitationally stable areas of our solar system. So the colonies of Side 3 came together, declared independence and formed a nation called the Republic of Zeon under then Prime Minister Zeon Zum Daikun, who believed that the people of space, like anyone else, deserved self-determination and independence, and that, free from Earth's gravity, humanity would eventually evolve a sixth sense, allowing them to communicate mentally and bringing about a new era of peace. Those new humans would then be called Newtypes. The Earth Federation responded to their declaration of independence by halting all resources to the colony, causing Daikun to create a colonial guard in case the Federation decided to escalate things and invade the colonies. 10 years later, when he suddenly and conveniently died of a heart attack, the Zabi family took control and transitioned the Republic into a monarchy and became the Principality of Zeon and aimed for independence by force. They spent a further 10 years preparing, developing new weapons known as mobile suits, which proved devastatingly effective after they declared war and their Zaku's tore apart the Federation space fleet. Many mobile suit pilots made a name for themselves and became known as ace pilots, the most important being known as Char Aznable. He destroyed 5 cruisers in a single battle in his red Zaku, earning him the name the Red Comet. That wasn't his only other name, however. His real name was actually Casval Rem Daikun, son of Zeon. As large as the Principality of Zeon's technological advantage was at the time, they were still massively outnumbered and out-resourced. It wasn't the mobile suits that killed nearly 6 billion people in a month. That was the result of Zeon's plan and attempt to end the war and win swiftly. They indiscriminately used weapons of mass destruction, but they didn't just use nukes, although they did do that too. Their plan was larger. They used G3 gas on inhabited Federation-controlled colonies, killing all of the inhabitants. They then planned to use one of those massive space colonies to destroy the Federation's headquarters deep underground in South America by dropping it onto the Earth, like a huge asteroid. They missed. The colony instead landing in Australia, with the force of 3 million of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. After that, and widespread desolation of the Federation, a treaty was signed on the 31st of January where both sides agreed to limit the use of WMDs. The next 7 months saw Zeon invade Earth and the war began to drag on. Zeon forces were less effective on land and had to adjust. Still, they had 20-metre tall giant robots, so over time they managed to take control of over 2/3 of the Earth's surface. But this comparatively slow pace of war and the Federation's larger size and resources allowed them to develop mobile suits of their own. Testing of the prototypes was secretly planned to be done on Side 7. It wasn't secret for long though. Their plans were discovered by the Zeon forces under Char, and this is where both shows begin. But not quite where our explanation ends yet. If you want to watch the original series before Gundam GQuuuuuX though, the trilogy of compilation movies is generally recommended to newcomers. It was these recap movies that actually saw the series become successful. Quite like Star Trek the original series, it was on the brink of cancellation and was actually only kept afloat by the female fans. The full series is also very good though, it's just up to you what you would prefer. The only thing I'd say is if you're a dub watcher, you might be better off with the series, as the casting of the movies doesn't really match the rest of the franchise. But now that you know that, you don't have to worry about getting whiplash when the characters sound different in the other series, so I'd still say just watch whatever you would prefer. While both shows start in the same place, GQuuuuuX diverges with Char deciding to go on the mission and enter the colony personally. His more capable piloting and intuition causes them to find the Federation prototypes earlier, before the original protagonist could, and so Char himself gets in the robot and captures it for Zeon. The reason this changes everything is because the Gundam is another massive technological leap. It uses a new alloy for its armour, Luna Titanium, or, as it's more commonly known after the war, Gundarium, which renders it pretty much impervious to physical attacks and the conventional weapons of mobile suits at the time, like heat axes and the Zaku's machine gun. That time wouldn't last much longer though, because it also had a battleship-class beam rifle, and for close combat, beam sabers. It did, of course, still face threats. By the end of the war, it wasn't that special anymore, but the impact it had on the war was still large, and it allowed its young pilot to safely grow and become an ace pilot of his own, eventually even seeming to become a new type, and really becoming the real asset, with the Gundam itself no longer able to really even keep up with him. So, it being captured by Zeon, who already believed in and had been researching new types, would of course not be good for the Federation. The Principality being the Principality, they were of course researching them in order to weaponize them. Enter the Psychomu, a way of utilising the new type's latent psychic abilities to communicate with and directly control weapons, allowing basically extra drones to be controlled and used by the mobile suit pilot to attack from multiple angles and multiple places. The reason this is actually important and useful, and they can't just, use actual regular drones and stuff, is because of the fictional Minovsky particle, which is created when the fusion reactors in mobile suits and ships consume helium-3, which they get from Jupiter. Minovsky particles then, when spread in high density, which becomes just pretty unavoidable when a reactor is fully utilised in combat, and especially with the use of beam weapons and the like, causes massive interference, making communication extremely difficult. The Psycommu then allows this interference to be bypassed, so that extra bits and funnels can be controlled by the pilot wirelessly. With all of this given to Char, who had already shown some new type tendencies, you can expect things to get a bit wild, and not necessarily for the best of the Principality. If the Zabi family knew he was Zeon Zumdaikun's son, they never would have let him use the Gundam, or do much else for that matter, to be honest. He'd probably be lucky to be thrown in prison. Because, you see, Zeon Zumdaikun's heart attack was no accident. The Zabi family killed him in order to take control, and Char knows it. Char's real goal in the military is to get revenge on the Zabi family. He and his younger sister, Artesia Daikun, managed to escape when they were young with the help of Jimba Ral and the Ral family, and found a new life on Earth. But Char could never forget what happened, and could never forgive the Zabis, and so left to join the military under a new name. His sister was too young to really know what was going on or remember her father, so she was happy really to just live in peace and let things be. The war had other plans. Through various means, she ends up fighting for the Federation, and is eventually found to be quite the effective pilot, just like her brother. It's ironic, really. She, who was uninterested in revenge, ends up fighting against Zeon and the Zabis, while her brother fights under them, for them, in order to betray them. Finally, getting into the Zabi family, the one at the top who arranged to seize power is Daegwon Zabi, and his children are in various positions of power in the military. His eldest, Giren, is the supreme commander of the Principality of Zeon. He interpreted Daikun's ideals as meaning the Spacenoids were the superior race, and related to some historical figures as a result. He was the one responsible for most of the war crimes committed by Zeon, to the point that even his father was disappointed in him and appalled by what he had done. In contrast, his other son, Dozil Zabi, was a simpler, kinder man that loved his family and wife and daughter Minerva Zabi. During the war, he primarily operated out of the massive asteroid base known as Solomon, and piloted a mobile armour, which is like a bigger, weirder, generally less humanoid mobile suit. His was called the Big Zam, which is a bit of a meme in the community. I mean, look at it. Daegwon had one daughter, Kycelia, who was a lot more of a schemer, and whom Char worked under after he was kicked out of Dozil's forces after the death of Garma Zabi, the youngest and favourite son. He was widely popular and was even considered Char's friend, the two having gone through training together. And that should hopefully be just about everything you could possibly need to know. The only thing I feel like I probably haven't been able to properly convey is the sympatheticness of Zeon. Because just looking at the events, yeah, they're complete bastards. But the full series themselves show that there's a lot of just normal soldiers who are fighting because they have to, or for their own independence from the kinda shitty Federation. Zeon Zumdaikun's original ideals that a lot of the soldiers and people of the Principality believe in are good and gave the people of space hope for a better future. Zeon was an environmentalist who believed Earth was the sacred birthplace of mankind, not created to be abused and polluted by a few members of an elite, privileged class, and that people who have never been to space shouldn't think they can own it. But his ideals were taken and twisted until they eventually wreaked unbelievable havoc and destruction of the Earth itself. This video ended up a lot longer than I expected. Hopefully I can actually get it edited before the series comes out. It's ended up being pretty much a complete primer for UC Gundam, but with the prologue covering so much, so fast, and the events of GQuuuuuX, meaning that most of these characters should theoretically still be alive, and so could potentially show up later in some form, it was a bit unavoidable. The good thing is, at this point, if you watched all of this, you're pretty well versed in Gundam, and so could pretty much watch just whatever you want, beyond even just GQuuuuuX. Like I said, you can watch the original series, or movie trilogy. I avoided spoiling any of the events except for Char's backstory, a lot of which comes from the newer Gundam The Origin series anyway, which is a prequel pretty much following Char's life before the main series. If you did manage to make it through this entire video, thank you so much. I plan to make more videos like this in the future, so subscribe please if you enjoyed this video. Thank you again. Until hopefully next time, bye!